Can you imagine a time in your life where things are hard, emotionally, mentally hard? I would imagine so. From my own experiences and the one that we're about to hear about, I'm not sure if people are really aware of the impact that running can have in terms of changing someone's life. Hello and welcome to the Ultra Running Podcast with me, Coach Marshy. I hope you are all well. So we are going to meet today's guest. We're going to welcome Alex to the show. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hey, man. I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. You done much running lately?
Yeah, been really busy actually. I've got the I'm doing the David Goggins 4x4x48 this weekend. So I've been running kind of 3-4 times a day lately, which has been quite manic.
There we go. We'll actually talk about that in a minute. That's cool. That's really cool. So, Alex, tell us who you are, what you do day to day. Who are you? What's your involvement in running?
So my day-to-day job is I run a company that offers artist management and development services for up-and-coming bands. I've been doing that for the last kind of 4 years since I graduated from uni. Then on the side, just this year, really, I've been trying to kind of get more involved in the running space as a kind of, as an athlete, you could say. I'm working with some great companies that are kind of sponsoring me for the running challenges that I take on, like Voom Nutrition and Juve Sports Projects. So I'm working with them, those guys, to just kind of start building a base for what I guess we'll talk about it later, but for my new race, the Ultra Loop.
Yeah.
So just kind of trying to get involved in the community basically to spread that event. Yeah.
Brilliant. So let's sort of go back to how you got into running. So how did you first start to see running in the last year or in the last few years? How did you see running as like a mechanism for you? What made you get into it?
So basically back in, would have been kind of early 2019, I was in a very difficult space mentally. My life was it felt like it was out of my control, really. After some quite traumatic family issues, I'd been left with some really kind of intense anxiety, which led to agoraphobia, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically a fear of being outside your comfort zone. So for me, my comfort zone was my house, and I couldn't leave the house without having a panic attack. That was kind of the extent it had gotten to. Even if I would just open the front door, walk out the house, I would just have an instant panic attack because I'm outside my comfort zone. So at that point, that was kind of my whole life. I was just trapped inside my house. And so at the start of 2019, I basically was trying to figure out ways of getting myself out the front door with a purpose, and running became that for me.
So let's just unpack that a little bit then and go back. So how for someone that doesn't understand that, how does that feel to be kind of restricted to your house and that sense of anxiety before you're going to go out maybe, or when you step out that front door? You mentioned those things, but what is it like to be in your head at that time?
It's really strange because, well, I first started experiencing sort of anxiety attacks back in 2016, which is kind of a whole separate story. But back in 2016, I was in my second year of uni and I was experimenting with a lot of, I guess you could say, heavy drugs. And this one night, it was at a party, 4 a.m. And basically I had my first panic attack. And from that point, I just started experiencing just kind of really manic anxiety. And I would have panic attacks at least a few times a week, just kind of triggered by nothing. Like my body just went completely out of control after basically taking it too far with the alcohol and the drugs. And so from that point, that was kind of a whole self-discovery journey of how do I figure out this anxiety. And long story short, I regained control of myself over about the next year. So, through 2016, 2017, and then from that point, I was fine for a couple of years. I regained complete control over my mental health, and then it basically restarted all over again with this new situation. And so before all of that, I was never an anxious person. Like, I'd never really felt like I'd ever experienced any kind of anxiety apart from, maybe your everyday nerves about certain things. And so the experience from 2016 up until today has just been something that was completely new to me. So it felt really strange, and especially with the kind of the second iteration of it with the agoraphobia, it was kind of way more difficult than the first time around, because it just felt like you had no control. It was just a constant state of fear, and like I say, it can be really hard to explain that to someone, and for someone to understand who hasn't been through it, because it's just like a mental block. It's just like the thought of going up to the front door just created like a full body fear response. Your mind would race, you start sweating, your heart palpitations, I'd go dizzy, and that would happen every single time. And I didn't really have a choice. It felt like.
Yeah, no, that like you said, it is probably hard to relate to, but it sounds like, a real kind of mental block, as you put it. Did you reach out to anyone else who'd said they'd experienced the same sort of thing and talk to anyone?
Not particularly. I think it was the start of 2019. I went to like an anxiety workshop group, which was great. It was really helpful in making me feel like I was being proactive about something. That was one of the things that also got me out of the house, was like, I need to go and do this. And I'd basically been trapped in my bedroom for the last 6 months. And so just the idea of, right, I'm leaving the house to try and tackle this now, that was one of the first steps as well. But it was helpful in the act of doing it, but the content wasn't too helpful, because it was more based around like just general anxiety. And
Yeah.
I'd come to figure out that it was almost a completely different thing. And so that was helpful. But in terms of figuring out how to tackle the agoraphobia, it was more of just a personal thing. I just spent so much time just like experimenting with different ideas. Once I kind of said to myself, I need to do something about this now, it was a case of like, okay, what can I do? And I would just basically try and figure it out by myself. And I'm sure it could have been very useful to speak to someone who'd had experience with it. It probably would have sped up the process, but it's turned out all right.
And like within that process, or that, two questions really. One is, was there a certain trigger moment, whatever, that made you decide it was time to sort it out?
Yeah, but I think it was kind of just it was like the start of that year, and I think it's the whole, the new year, new me thing. It really worked for me that year, because up until that point, like I said, I was luckily I was self-employed. So I was working from home. I didn't have to leave the house. I had no reason to leave. Like, I could get my food shops delivered.
Yeah.
I had no responsibilities really. I lived with my partner at the time anyway, so I was already with the person that I needed to be with, essentially. So I had every excuse to not leave the house. And it came to the start of this next year, and I was just like, I can't keep living like this. Like, do I really want my life to be like this in another 5 years? Like, I've got so many things I want to do, and I'm not going to be able to do it if I don't start making an effort. So that was kind of the moment.
Yeah. No, cool. And then the second question on that then, obviously the pandemic hit in 2020. Where were you as the pandemic hit? Because I could imagine that idea that we all had to stay in all of a sudden probably wasn't helpful.
So this is the thing. I actually found it quite helpful,
Right,
which is strange, right? Because I had a funny way of looking at it. But basically, one of the main issues I had mentally, aside from the agoraphobia, because being trapped inside your house, it comes with a whole other load of kind of mental issues when it comes, depression. And so one of my main things at the time was feeling like I was kind of inferior to everyone else that I knew, because everyone else could walk out of the house. They would go on holidays, they were going to work, they were doing whatever they wanted. And so it made me feel, I guess inferior is the right word. I didn't feel like I was a regular person. And so when the pandemic hit, it removed so much pressure to have to feel like I was not on the same level as everyone else, if that makes sense. Like, everyone had to stay at home. And so that it just removed the huge social pressure of why aren't I out there? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And obviously being involved in my own business with a gym, and obviously speaking to a lot of people through the podcast now, I've found that there are people coming out with positives from the pandemic, and really bad. Lots of people died, and we get all that. But there are things where it helped people, and in some cases, like yourself, from a actual mental health point of view, has helped with that situation. And like you said, you used the word inferior to society, I guess, when you were there in 2019, but in 2020, it almost became a level playing field, and everyone was in the same boat. And yeah, I can see how that happened. I'm glad I asked you that then, because I wondered if it had an adverse effect, but actually maybe it was a benefit. So you mentioned then you looking at all these strategies that you would put in place, and you try lots of things, and you obviously found running in that. So how did running assist with this and the mental health, and how that changed?
So I'd always kind of been interested in, staying active, especially since my first kind of bout of anxiety in 2016. I quit the drugs, quit the alcohol. I was a heavy smoker, so I quit smoking. From that point, I've already got involved in being active. Basically, I started sort of going to martial arts classes and weightlifting and stuff like that. But I'd never really been too interested in running, and for no reason. But at this point, I couldn't go to the gym because that felt like too much. I was kind of bored of just doing push-ups at home and stuff. And like I say, with the pandemic, there was even fewer options. So it was just kind of like, what can I do? Because I was still kind of health obsessed. That was one of my past anxieties. I had like quite a lot of health anxiety, which I assume came from because initially my anxiety was caused by the drink and the drugs and everything. So I went the other way. I was like, I have to be as healthy as possible all the time. Otherwise that used to be a trigger.
Right.
And so when the pandemic hit, and even just generally at that time, I was like, what can I do to stay healthy, to stay active? And I just thought running. And after my first run during that time there's basically a park near my house, which is like a perfect 1 kilometer like square with like a field in the middle. And so my first run was I ran to the gate of that park and then just pegged it home as fast as I could, because I was just, as soon as I left the house, it was just, I was already in a panic attack as soon as I left the front door. So I ran just like in my fight or flight response to the front gate, legged it back, and that was my first run. But doing that was, when I got back and I had calmed down, I was like, I just achieved something. Like that was what I needed. I needed that first break, and to show myself that like I had the courage to be able to go out the front door. Like once I'd done it once, I was like, this is what I'm going to do, because my mind started racing. Then I was like, right, it's a great way to do it, because I can just run further and further each time, and I can run to different places and all sorts.
Brilliant. What a how far was that? Just was it quite a short distance from your front door to the
It
gate?
was less than 2 minutes, maybe even less than that.
Okay. So this process really much started with a kind of 5-minute bout of exercise, really.
Yeah. It might have even been less. I can't really remember. It was literally just a couple of streets away was the gate to the park.
Okay, and then sort of, so how did that then progress? Because obviously, like you said, you obviously got back, and you knew it was the thing that you were going to do, because once you calmed down, you realized that you were going to use this as a tool. So how did you then go about it? Did you just progress it on each time, or give it a little bit further each time?
Yeah, basically. So I started kind of just going once or twice a week, and I can't quite remember exactly how I did it, but it was every kind of 1 or 2 weeks I would try and push it a little bit further. So the first couple of times it was just to the gate and back, and then a couple of weeks later it would be, I'm going to open the gate and I'm going to take a step in, and then I'm going to go back. So it was that slow, and so it took months, but over months I basically started making my way further into the park, and eventually managed to do a whole loop around the park. And then it just progressed from there. And then it was 2 loops, 3 loops, 4 loops. And at that point, I just noticed that everything else was kind of coming along with me. Like I was just feeling more positive about everything. I couldn't drive at all at the time. And so, but after, doing this for 3-4 months, my confidence just really slowly started to increase. So I was getting in the car, just sitting in the car, not going anywhere. And then going back in the house. And then I started building up everything else alongside it. Then, you know, I would start going food shopping instead of getting it delivered and stuff like that. And so over time, after about 6 months, maybe, I was then picking new routes. So I would look on the map and I would find like a point to run to, whether that's like there was like a Sainsbury's. It was like maybe like 1.5 km from the house. And so I would run there. It was pretty much a straight line. So I would run there and run straight back. I had like parameters at the time. So it was like, if I don't know how to get home as quickly as possible, then I can't do it. So it was like, it was either a loop or it was a straight line, basically, because I needed to know how to get back as quickly as I could in case, you know, things got out of control, sort of thing.
Yeah. And did that happen at all? Were you out on any runs where that did actually happen?
Yeah, tons of times. At the beginning, it was almost every run.
Yeah.
It was, I would run to, you know, like the Sainsbury's. It would take me maybe like 7 or 8 minutes to run there. And the closer I would get to it, the more anxious I would get. And I guess that's because I was getting further away from my house. So then by the time I was at the Sainsbury's, I was in like full blown panic mode. And then as I'd start to run back, I would start to relax because I'm getting closer to the house. And so it was kind of that process again and again, almost every time, until just over time, it just started to kind of reduce.
Do you think people suffer from agoraphobia without knowing it?
Potentially to some level, yeah, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just something I wondered if you know, having been there, you know, would you say that was a possibility?
I'd say so. I mean, I definitely think even my younger brother, he's on the autistic spectrum, and he has a lot of anxiety and stuff. I mean, he's never been diagnosed as with agoraphobia, but he doesn't really like leaving the house very much.
Yeah,
he doesn't really like going places on his own, stuff like that. So I think there's probably a level of it to a lot of people. It's just kind of weaved into people's lives, isn't it?
Yeah. So 6 months in, you're going a little bit further, new routes, out and backs, loops, making sure you had a plan to get home. And then you obviously progressed on from that and continued to run and found running a benefit. When you say everything else came along with it, was it being outside, was it running, or was it a combination of those two things that made those things come along?
I think it was a combination. I think I found something that I was really passionate about and that gave me enjoyment, but at the same time, it was also like, I think I became really grateful for running because it had started to give me back my life, essentially. And so I guess when I think about how it all came together, running definitely started it all because it's what gave me my confidence to attempt to fix these other things. And so I'm trying to kind of think of what other, you know, processes I went through, but it was what I learned from the running was basically how to do everything with progression. So like I did the same thing with driving. I would just drive like 5 minutes, go back to the house, drive 10 minutes back to the house. And so I employed the same methods that I learned from running in everything else that I was doing.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of runners will listen to this and will be able to relate on some level, you know, whether they've had trouble with their mental health or not. I think people use things that they learn from out there and they apply it to normal life and everyday life and everyday things, and you can really see a benefit. So, okay, so here we are now in 2021. I think we first spoke on the day of the National Running Show. We didn't speak in person, but I think that's when you first got in contact with us. So where are we in 2021? What are you up to? What is the plan, and what are you planning to do?
So basically, I last year I began thinking about how I can get more involved in the running community. Basically, you know, I've become so in love with it now that I'd kind of just want to do it all the time, or at least do something in this space all the time. And so I thought, well, actually, I may as well take the story back. But basically, I was as I'd really got into running, I was looking for events, races, things I could do. And because at that time the anxiety was still very prevalent, I didn't want to. I was looking at ultras, and I didn't really have the ability to go and drive to the Peak District and go and run 50 miles there. Or there's no ultras in Manchester that just stay in Manchester. There's one that goes from Manchester to Liverpool, not an option. So I just thought, there's a big gap here, and it was kind of a selfish reason to start this event because I just wanted to start it for me. Basically, I was like, there's nothing here that I can go and run that's past the marathon, so I'm going to kind of start one. And so I came up with the idea of the Ultra Loop, which is basically the first version of the event is a 50k event, but it's running 10 5k loops around Heaton Park in Manchester. And the idea is that anyone who signs up, they can just turn up on the day and run as many loops as they like up to 50k. So you don't have to sign up for a particular distance. You can just come. If you plan to run 10k, but you feel like you got another loop in you, go do 15k. The idea was basically just to make it as accessible as possible for everyone, because that's what I felt that I was missing. So if there's someone else out there who wants to run ultras but doesn't want to drive an hour and run across God knows where, then they can just come, to their doorstep in Manchester, and there's an ultra event there for them. So that was kind of the beginnings of the event. And so I launched that early this year. It doesn't take place till March next year, but I wanted to kind of learn about how to do it because I've got a degree in event management, but I've never organized, sporting events or anything. So I've got a lot to learn. So I want to give myself a good amount of time. But aside from that, I'm running a lot, trying to take on some new challenges, just still working at my distance. I'm still using running as a tool to improve my mental health. The agoraphobia is still very much a thing. Luckily, it's not as bad, anywhere near as bad as it used to be, to the point where, over Christmas, I drove home to Wales for the first time in about 3 years. It's only an hour's drive, but that was like a huge step. Last summer, I went to my partner's parents' house, which is about 4 hours away. So like, they're regular things to most people, but for me, they were like huge, huge achievements. And so going into this year, I was feeling much more confident about what I might be able to do this year. I'm just trying to make the most of that, basically.
Yeah, no, really interesting, because I think when you look at it, I mean, we'll say it, we're one of the first to hear it here. I think that, making the ultra running world accessible to all is a great shout. I'll give you another viewpoint on it, and it was something that I noticed once we'd introduced each other to ourselves on Instagram, is that when I look at the Ultra Loop, I now look at that and go, actually, I've got a running club. All right, we're down in Cambridge, but I've got a running club that has a massive ability range, as in 100-mile ultra runners, all the way down to people that are trying to do their first couch to 5K. And whether you are a 100-mile runner or whether you are a couch to 5K person, wherever you are in that journey, on that spectrum, if you like, you are in the same mindset for that next level of running. Now, the challenge we have is we're really community-based, and we want to be together regardless of ability. Well, the loop is something that is going to open that up, because they literally, people can come up and they can almost be, I guess, they could do a 5K, 10K loop, and then they could almost support the other guys that want to go and do the whole 50K. And, it just as an event, it struck me as a really accessible intro, if you like, to the ultra running world. And as you probably are aware, you've probably done some research and realized that there are quite a lot of events out there that do loops as part of their world. I mean, let's talk about Goggins and what you're up to right now, because that's kind of a bit of I guess it's a concept that's similar. Tell me about the David Goggins challenge that you're doing. I know lots about it, but tell the guys what you're up to.
So this Friday, March 4th, David Goggins created a challenge where his idea behind it was basically to show people that challenging yourself is more mental than it is physical. So he came up with the idea of running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So that starts on Friday. The training for it has been I've just been trying to figure it out because there's no there's no handbook, there's no one sort of making any suggestions. And I think people do that on purpose because it's a Goggins thing. It's like what it's all about, go and figure it out yourself and take on the challenge. So I've just been trying to figure it out. It's been quite difficult, but I'm excited to do it.
So let's assume that you do that on the first hour of every 4-hour period, say, right? Mm-hmm. Is that your plan?
Yeah. So it starts 8 p.m. So it'll be 8 p.m, midnight, 4 a.m, 8 a.m, 12 p.m, and then go on to the next day doing that basically.
Cool. So I haven't done one yet. Very much. I don't think if I wasn't injured, I think I'd be joining in this year. But I think I've done things that are similar, which perhaps involve running 5K every hour, every couple of hours or whatever, as part of a relay team. And you're right. There's a mental challenge in there, and it is probably going to be more mental to get up at 12 midnight. You might not have gone to bed, but 4 a.m. is a bit different. So, So what do you think's going to happen? Where's your head at with it?
Physically, I feel very confident. Like with the training, I got it up to a point where I was running, because it's 12 runs over 2 days. So I got it up to where I was doing kind of 14, 15 runs over 3 or 4 days. I was running kind of 4 times a day over the weekend, stuff like that. So physically, I feel fine about it. But I think the biggest challenge is going to be that kind of the logistics, because if I'm going out at midnight, say it's a 40-minute run, got to get back, I might eat, then I've got to get changed, try and get a couple hours sleep, and then be up, at least 20 minutes before the next run. So it's not going to be any more than say 2 hours sleep between each run. And I think that's what's going to be the biggest challenge for me, because I usually, I need my sleep. And so I think just only getting 2 hours sleep at a time for 48 hours straight is going to be the most difficult part.
Yeah, no, it'll be exciting to hear from you and hear what you did and how it went. Because you got a set 4-mile loop that you're gonna do the same loop every time.
I think for some of them I have. I've got a friend he's like a videographer, filmmaker guy, and he's going to come and shoot like a mini documentary around it. So I want to do some different routes just so it's a bit more exciting for the mini doc. But for the most part, I've got, again, just a park near my house, and it's 4 loops of that going from my house and back to my house is almost exactly 4 miles. So it works out well.
Excellent. That'll be good to hear what you have to say. So back to the loop, the ultra loop that you're planning to do in March 23. Who are you trying to attract to the event?
Everyone, I think. I've found it quite difficult to start all of this because it's, like I said, I've never done anything like this before. So I'm trying to figure out the market, figure out the demographics and stuff. But so far, surprisingly, most of the entries have actually been people kind of over 50. A lot of over 50s have signed up, all for the ultra distance. But I think it's great just to see so many different kinds of people that are doing stuff like this. So I think my target market is just kind of everyone, it seems like.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned when you introduced it that it kind of was a gap that you saw because you obviously didn't want to travel, and you said it was quite a selfish thing, but you referred to people in the local area. Are you seeing entries from afar as well?
They're pretty much 98% from afar.
Right,
almost no one local yet, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm kind of talking to a lot of local running clubs and stuff like that. And everyone's got really positive feedback and everyone's kind of really interested in it. But I think because it's so far ahead, people just aren't quite signing up yet because it's still over a year away. But it looks like so far most people are just going to be traveling there. So the idea maybe didn't go as planned, but it's people signing up and people coming to the event. So that's the important thing.
And I see that you've reached out to the community as well. Obviously, you reached out to us. And is it Runspire that you've reached out to as well?
Yeah, Runspire. Again, I was just kind of looking at who I can get involved with in terms of, people who are integrated in the community. So Runspire, and I've got a bunch of other brands that I'm working with and stuff as well.
That's cool. And are they going to try and encourage runners to go and join in?
Yeah, hopefully. I think they're kind of trying to build like a Runspire team sort of thing,
Yeah.
where they'll all kind of come up together and see it as like a like a community meeting event sort of thing.
Yeah, I follow a lot of those guys on social media, and they certainly do weekends away and things like that where they go running, and there's lots of inspirational people in there. So you never know. Hopefully we'll get to meet some of them when we're up there as well. We're certainly going to travel up as well from Cambridge up to see you guys for this event. So it'll be exciting. So is there any sort of aspirations for the loop? Is it to raise awareness for certain things? Is it, to document the journey? Is it the next step in your journey? What's sort of the aspirations?
I think to begin with, I was just trying to focus on the one event because I didn't want to kind of overwhelm myself. But now that I'm in the process of it, and I'm kind of really enjoying myself and trying to be a part of the community. And so my hope is that within a few years, I can just kind of have ultra loops popping up everywhere. We'll bring one down to Cambridge, we'll take one to London, to Liverpool. Like, we'll just have them kind of popping up in all the different cities. Similar concepts, but because the event is so flexible, I want to kind of take it from. I might even do like 100-miler that's just 1 mile loops, so it's like 100 loops.
Yeah.
Or it could go the other way where it's just like 5 20-mile loops, or 10 20-mile loops. It's just, there's so many options with it. So my hope is to just kind of take it everywhere, have loads of different formats, and along the way kind of build and share the message of kind of what we're talking about today in terms of how running can change your life, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've spoke to a couple of other sort of race owners and directors recently as well on the show, and you guys are opening up our ultra running world now, which is, for me, as someone who, I guess I ended up as an ultra runner because I naturally progressed to that. It was like the next step, and eventually, before I knew it, I'd done an Ironman and then done a 50-mile ultra race and a 70-miler. And I think the accessibility and availability is much better now in 2021. When I first did it in 2014, there wasn't that many, but it was starting to grow a little bit, and now it's starting to become more available, and I think it's really positive. And I'd love that your version of what you're going to bring into the ultra running community is something that can link the people that do ultras, but also allow family members, running club members, friends to maybe come participate, but at a much sort of lighter, shorter distance, if that's what they want to do, and then would still be able to probably hang around and help out their friend, family member, whoever, as part of that extra bit. So no, I think it's great. I think it's really good what you've decided to do, and what a really positive outcome from a situation that you found yourself in as well. I think that's inspiring when people use something that was negative in their life to bring it into a positive. And great credit to you, mate. I think it's great to hear your story and hear about that. So yeah, no, fair play. Any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely right. I've been very inspired by a lot of people online, like kind of Rich Roll, Hella Sidibe. I listen to a bunch of different podcasts and stuff, and I think what I take from what I've been able to learn from a lot of the people that I've been inspired by is it's so important to have, or to try and find the ability to turn negative into positive. Because I say I could still be stuck where I was, those 3 years ago, if I hadn't just found the courage to make the effort to try and do something about it. And I think it can be, I know how hard it is to be trapped in those situations, or any situation where you feel like you're stuck, or you feel like you don't have a choice, or you're really struggling with something. It can be so difficult to be like, right, I'm going to do something about this now, and to be able to maintain the effort in trying to like change your life in that way, because there are so many knockbacks, and it's so easy to fail when the risks are so high. And so I just think it's really important that we just try and kind of share, what people have been able to achieve by using things. It doesn't even have to be running, does it? It can be anything, but just finding your thing and making use of it, and trying to whether it's short term or long term, turning whatever negative experiences you've been through into something positive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The whole pay it forward approach is awesome. And let me tell you that I already find this story inspiring and what you've done to it. And I think, take it from me, from someone that's worked in an industry as well, that people will listen to this episode even, and they will find your story. It will change someone's life. And you've just done that by simply coming and sharing it on a platform where we decided we want to tell some stories about ultra running. And you're now becoming one of those people that can inspire others, and you've built this great platform to do it. And you haven't had an event yet, but I'm sure it's going to be a great success, and I'm really excited to see it. And you released a few pictures the other day on the Instagram account, which showed the park itself, and it looks a bit picturesque, and we're good to run around that lots of times. It'll be really cool. So no, it's awesome, mate. It's awesome. So couple of questions then. We've answered my normal question, which is, was it something that inspired you in the media, someone you knew, or was it sort of a natural next step for you as to why you got into this? You've already answered that a million times through this, so we'll miss that one out. You mentioned strength training, that you've done it in the past. Have you considered it much as part of a training program for your David Goggins challenge?
So initially I did. I only had about a 6-week window to train because in November last year, I picked up a calf injury and that had me out for about 6 weeks. So starting this year, I didn't have too much time to train. And so I spent January kind of doing a bit of a hybrid program where I was doing strength training and just kind of getting back into running. So I focused a lot on just trying to rebuild strength in my legs, my core and stuff like that. And then come February, I just started focusing on the running a bit more because I noticed that I just wasn't quite feeling the way I wanted to. I wasn't feeling very confident in my ability to do the distance multiple times a day. So I just focused on the running after that, and the stretches. But after this challenge is over, I'm going to go back to my kind of hybrid program where I do both in a day, basically.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of what running means to you, Alex, what does running mean to you?
I think at this point it just means, it kind of means everything. Like I use it for everything. Every day it's what I think about. I'm thinking about, can I run today? Am I too tired? Should I still go anyway? Like I just love it every time. And even when I don't love it, I still love it. If that makes sense. Like even when I'm out there and I'm not enjoying the run. The other day I got caught in like a massive hailstorm and I was just like soaking wet and it was horrid. But then I got back and I was like, that was so good.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not doing it anymore. It's just something that I want to do all the time. And like I say, with this kind of hopeful career path now with the race and stuff, I just want to spend all my time in this community because it's so like the community itself is just so supportive and open, and the people I've met just in a few short months of trying to be involved in it, it's just been so inspirational already. And so I hope to just keep using running as my main tool.
Yeah. No, I love that. What do your family and loved ones and friends think of this?
Most of them are just like, "Oh my god, you're running that far," and it's only 4 miles a few times a day, and it's like, yeah, most people are like that, but everyone's really supportive, and I've got my friend coming. He's gonna come and make this documentary around the challenge, but he's also going to help, make my meals and do all this sort of stuff. So my partner's really supportive with it all. She has to put up with me just being out of the house for hours a day, running and coming back all dirty and stuff. But yeah, everyone's really, really supportive with it.
Does she run?
No. She's
a running widow.
Yeah. She just goes to she goes to spin class. She loves going to spin and she does a bit of strength training and stuff. But she gets bored running, which I think is a very common thing, actually, isn't it? A lot of people get bored.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit like you. I couldn't really imagine my world without it. Unfortunately, for the last 16 months, I have been on and off and been very much without it. And you'd be surprised how much that can affect, old skeletons in the closet, if you like. They start rustling about a bit. So, you know, I think for me, running, I hear what you say. And, you know, when you say it's everything, like that doesn't, to me, I completely get that. Whereas I think you're right. Other people perhaps might look at it and go, well, running's a bit boring. How can that be such a big thing? But it is. So, brilliant, Alex. It's been great. So if people want to follow the journey, if you like, of the development of the loop and yourself, how can they find out about it?
So Instagram, my personal Instagram is just, I think it's at Alex Mac R. Yeah. And then there's the race Instagram, which is at the Ultra Loop. The race also has a website, which is theultraloop.co.uk. And that's kind of it. But I also write for a running magazine called Ultra Running Magazine. So you could check those guys out. We do a bunch of cool articles about stuff all to do with ultra running.
Yeah, cool. I've been reading a couple of those that I did buy at the running show at the beginning of the year. So awesome. So thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to personally look forward to the development of the loop and look forward to it and the continued journey of yours as well. It'll be great to catch up on here at some point as well, as we get closer to the event as well. For anyone who's listening today, if you've found Alex's story interesting, or you know someone who could do with hearing it, then I'd very much recommend that you share the episode with them, either audio or YouTube, just so that they can, you know, see how mental health and running can be linked in such a positive way. I'm definitely someone who would endorse that and back up everything Alex has said, but from a different viewpoint as well. And if you enjoyed the show, make sure to give us a rating and give us a little review on here as well. And please don't forget to join us again. And I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and you can join us here to talk more on the Ultra Running Podcast with me, Coach Marshy.